Hi, my name is Chinedu. Welcome to the Global Trade and Supply Chain series. This is a very interesting series that aims to educate us and bring us into full understanding of what the global trade and supply chain entails. First of all, there's the word global trade and there's the word supply chain. What is trade before we even talk about global trade? Of course, trade involves buying and selling, right? Of goods and services between two parties. So there's a selling party and there's a buying party. Now, global trade involves how trade or buying and selling occurs between two or more countries, right? So when there are two countries involved, say the supplier is in country A and the buyer is in country B, that becomes global trade. Now, the way we have global trade, we also have local trade, right? Where it's a trade that occurs within a particular country. Now, so for global trade to occur, goods are moving from one point to another point, right? Because there's a seller and there is a buyer. That is where supply chain comes into the picture. Now, supply chain is the dots that connects that trade. Supply chain is how the trade is able to work, right? So I see supply chain as the engineering behind how goods are exchanged and how money is also reversely exchanged as well, right? So consider, for instance, your furniture companies, how they come about their furnitures. First of all, there is somebody in the lower tier who have to probably pick those items because in supply chain you're looking at the lower party, the party that involves the suppliers, the distributors, the production, the delivery, right? So there are people assigned to picking up the raw materials, the raw product before it gets to the factory for manufacturing and processing, right? So in that value chain or in that chain of picking up the raw materials and sending it down to the center for production or for manufacturing, that is a part of the supply chain now. Because why? There is a supply and demand therein, right? So those items are picked and sent down to the production house, right, where they are converted into what you have as the furnitures today. Now, that is a furniture in the hand of the supplier or the seller. Remember, we said global trade involved buying and selling of goods and services between two countries, right? So that is the seller in country A. Now, the buyer in country B would require that furniture to get to his own side of the equation. Now, for that to happen, another chain comes into the picture, right? How does the seller get that item or the furniture from his own warehouse down to destination before it gets to the final consumer? Now, all of these things are the rows and the chains involved. So, global trade is very interesting and very attractive. However, the supply chain behind it is something you want to really understand to know how you come about those items in your houses, those items in your offices, those things you interact with on a daily basis is important to know even for your business. And the idea is at the end of this session, you will come into full understanding that will impact even your business decision making. So feel free to drop a comment on the post and ask me whatever you want to understand on global trade or supply chain as we take this series from this session and this episode to the next episode. Stay tuned and keep in touch. You would surely love this and love this experience. Thank you.